Hi everyone. So today, instead of the usual Q&A session, we have JavaScript scope workshop. You probably know about the Ubuntu scope Showdown, which has started this week, yesterday actually. It's a developer competition to write scopes. So you can write scopes in JavaScript, Go, and C++. So today, this first session will teach you about the basics of JavaScript scopes. We are going to start by creating a new scope with the SDK, and then we will tweak it until we have a new scope. And I will show you some of the cool stuff you can do with it. If you have a question, just prefix your question with question on IRC. I will try to get through them at the end of the session. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And now you should be able to see the JavaScript scopes tutorial, which is on developer.ubuntu.com. It teaches you the basics of how to get started. Most importantly, you have the requirements section, which guides you through the setup. It's a bit different from the rest of the SDK platform or stack, if you want, because you have to install the Unity.js scopes dev package and run this command, which is Unity.js scopes tool setup. It's important because it setups the JavaScript stack in your ARM shell. So make sure you have created your click targets before you run this command. On this tutorial, you also have API documentation, which is quite important. The documentation is improving constantly, but right now you have an early build, either in the JS scopes doc package that you will download when you install Unity.js scopes dev, or on this link. Here you go. We have the whole API documentation. I think there are still some holes, but I'll do my best to fill them as time goes by, and especially before the contest ends, which is in 6 weeks. So let's get started. I'm going to open the SDK and create a new scope project. So I'm clicking on new project, Unity scope JavaScript template. I'm going to create a scope name GitHub scope. Fill the correct developer ID. I don't need to change anything here, I think. It's like there is an issue. I can go further. Dash instead of underscore works. So GitHub scope. Next, I'm going to select the kit for my Nexus 4 and one for the desktop, since you can run scopes on the desktop with Unity scope tool. Next, Next, run cmake. It sets up the building environment. And again, for the second click target. Okay. So now I have a GitHub scope. I'm going to make this bigger. Any question on IRC? Nope. So right now, what you got is the default scope template. It's a weather scope. So I'm going to run it by clicking on run. And we're going to see what happens. Here it is. We have a weather scope, which is querying London. Let's change it to Paris. And it works. Weather changes. As you can see, it's pretty cold right now. So let's go through this scope template first. At the top, we are requiring Unity.js scopes. It's the main JavaScript package we are going to need for any scope. Then we also need HTTP. We have a few query strings we're going to use to call the API. This section is a card template, so I'm going to run it again. As you can see, we have two templates. Let me put that on top. We have the current template, which defines how results in the first category, which is the London JB category, are going to be displayed. So there is only one result here. So we can see much, but we have defined our category layout as a grid, the card size as medium. Let's see what happens if I change it to large. I run it again. And the result is much larger. And components define cards themselves. So in the title field of the card, we are going to use the title field of a results model. I'll go into more details about this later. But the idea is that the scope is returning a data model to the dash, and the dash is passing this data model and assigning a field from the model to field from defined in the scope view. So in our scope view, we have title, art, subtitle, and we associate these fields with our model, title, art, subtitle. We'll see a bit more of that later. And then we have the forecast template. Still a grid, even if you don't see it, but if I make it larger, you can see it's actually not a column, but several columns, so grid. The card layout is horizontal, which means the text is on the right and pictures on the left. Card size is small. We can make it bigger if we want, of course. So let's close the scope. When you call the scope's API, we have several steps. First, we have run, which is what happens when the dash contacts the scope. Start is when the scope starts running. Search is when the scope is displayed. So either the user is actively querying the scope with a search term, or just viewing the scope. And in this case, the search query is empty. So we have to return something in case the search query is empty. It's a behavior called surfacing in Scopes world. So we'll see the search function, which is, of course, the most important, a bit later. We have the preview step, which is what happens when you click a result. For example, if I click this result, the view switches to preview mode. As you can see, I'm not sure if it's very clear with this resolution, but you have a small text underneath the temperature, which is a description of the result. And you can have a whole set of widgets in this preview. So we have an image widget, a title widget, and a text widget. If you look at forecasts, yeah, it's the same thing. So image widget, title widget, subtitle, and text widget. I call them widgets because it should make sense to you this way. And so the preview step is in charge of creating this preview. So we are going to see how to build our search method and our preview as well by changing the API we are going to use. Right now we are using Open Weather Map, which is a pretty cool weather provider. But we are going to use GitHub instead. So I have a GitHub scope ready. Shortly after this session, the code will be available online, and you will be able to find it on developer.ubuntu.com. So let's have a look at the GitHub scope. At the GitHub scope, we're going to go through the code step by step. So first, as you can see, I'm requiring GitHub. And first, to be able to require it, you need to install it. And to install it, you need to go to npm.js, which is a Node package manager. Look for the API you want. So I found a GitHub API, and I'm going to add it to my scope. So to add it to your scope, you simply need to open the terminal and run unity.js scopes tool. Let's make sure I use the right command here. I'm going to file. All right, here it is. Install. Then you need to enter the path of your project. So mine is in home dev QML. Well, it's not QML, but it's in there. GitHub. Yes, first one. Source, node modules, and you just need to enter the name of the package you want. So in this case, GitHub. It can be any package on npm. For example, I'm going to install a random one, like GitHub archive. Well, this might be big. GitHub label. That sounds small. And here it's pulling GitHub label and adding it to our scope. Well, to a scope source. Seems that I have an error. Well, this npm package seems to have either weird dependencies, but at least it works. No, actually, it seems to have installed. Okay. Anyway, if I look in node modules, maybe there's a way to refresh this. No. Anyway, you can find the command on the JS scops tutorial, which is Unity.js scops tool install pass to node modules and the name of your package. When you've installed it, you can require it. So in this case, creating a GitHub API variable and registering with GitHub. So I've created a user agent for my app. The API is pretty well documented if you look at the npm page. It's pretty clear. I've just copied the example from the page and adjusted a few variables. So here I have a list of popular languages on GitHub. We'll talk about this later. And I have my card template. So this is going to be a grid page, which means if the results are just images, it would be a grid. On the phone, it would be a grid. If images and text, it will be a column, but multiple columns if I make it bigger. So as you can see, it's going to look like a column since the card layout is horizontal and card size is large. So what you need to do is to define this template and then register it as a renderer. So you use scopes_lib category renderer and you register it as JSON. Well, as a JSON string. So this part that turn still Steam. It was an early prototype. Now it's GitHub. It turns GitHub results in GitHub data into result cards. We'll see about this later. Let's look at our search function. Any question? No, not yet. So the search function is giving you access to a few important variables. Can query is the object that holds everything about the user query. Metadata is everything about the device that is accessible to the scope. So usually not much, but you still have stuff like location, settings, user local, that kind of stuff. So it's pretty important, but not that the user has the ability to refuse to pass this data to you, especially location. So can query, it has a query string function which returns the user query. We are registering a category. So category in a scope, well, I'm going to run this scope. I haven't actually. You will see how it looks. Right, wrong project. I'm making this one active. Building, and it's running. So as you can see, all the results you can see are in one category, which is called results, doesn't have a display name, it's a second parameter here, and doesn't have an icon, just an ID if you need, because categories need an ID. And you can see that if the user doesn't enter a query, I'm querying Ubuntu, and which explains these results. So if I type a query, let's say Snappy, for example, I get everything about Snappy projects. Well, several very different Snappy projects. And that's pretty much it. I'm removing the query, and we are back to Ubuntu. After, I'm declaring departments. So departments is this piece of UI that you can deploy. It can actually be a tree, so you can have entries that go deeper, but here just a list of items you can select. If I select, let's say, Haskell, we are going to have much less project expect. Here you go. So yeah, Haskell projects on GitHub about Ubuntu. So to build this list of departments, you can think of them as departments in a store, but it's a filter really. So I've created this this array of popular languages on GitHub. I could fetch these dynamically, but it wasn't in the scope of the tutorial. So I'm creating this list, and I'm iterating over it. And for each one, well, first I create a root department. It's the all languages entry you see here. So you can see it, recognize it by its display name. This method is quite simple. You create a new department, you give it an ID. Here, since it's the root department, the 0 department, it doesn't have an ID. It holds a can query. We are going to talk about this. And its name is all languages. And then for each item in the popular languages array, I'm creating a child department. So again, it's a department. Lang is just the name of the item. It's the display name as well, and it holds a can query. By it holds a can query, it's the query which is triggered when you click on it. So when I say that it holds the can query, it's just the same query that the user is running before you apply this department. Then I add the subdepartment to the root department. The API is pretty straightforward. You'll see in the documentation. It's not complicated at all. Then I register departments on my search reply item. It's part of the search function. The search reply is of course very important. It's what you return to the dash. It's what your scope returns to the dash. And here I say, if my can query has a department ID, so if it's a CAN query coming from a child department, then in my GitHub query, which I'm using just after that, I'm adding the language as an argument. So as you can see, the query variable is just the search term entered by the user. So after this step, you have query and language if it's set. So now I'm querying the GitHub API, which has a few arguments, number of results returned, and the query. It has other, I think, but these are just the ones we need. And for each item returned by this query, we are creating a result card. So it's the result card function we have here. So the idea is that you register results in a category. If you remember, we have created our category here. It's called results. And it's what holds results here. So I'm creating a categorized result within this category. And on this result, I set a new URI, which means when the user activates this result, it takes him or her to this URI. So in this case, it's what is returned by the GitHub API, which is called HTML URL, which is the URL of the project. Then we have the title. So I set the title. In this case, it's what the GitHub API calls the name, which is, you can see here in bold, Ubuntu tweaks, etc. Then we have the owner avatar URL returned by the GitHub API, which I set as the art of the result. And you can see appearing on the left of the title. And then I can set arbitrary fields. So here I create a subtitle field, and I use it for the full name, which is the full name of the project. For example, this one is called devstructure/Ubuntu. Then a description, which I'm going to use not on the result view, but on the preview. Ubuntu make, well, it doesn't have a great description. Let's look for a long description. Yeah, it's 2 lines. Ubuntu Tweak is a tool that makes it easy to configure your system and desktop settings. So this description is part of our result model, but it doesn't appear in the search view because here in the cat template, we are only asking for the title field, art field, and subtitle field. For example, if I change this to description, or let's make it even worse. Let's change the title. Switch the description to the title. I'm running it again, and here we go. We have the description instead of the title. I'm going to revert. And then my create result card function returns the categorized result object, and I use the push method on my search reply. It's as simple as this, and I can create as much as results as I want and push them to the search reply. And that's what it takes to sending results to the dash. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It's a few lines of code, and it just works. I'm going to see if there are any questions. Nope. So what next? We can start looking at the preview function. Oh, yeah, one thing I haven't showed you is how I have structured my code here. In the scope template, you can see the main function's code is in line. The search function code is right in the middle of the scope initialization code, and all the steps are a bit mixed up. And I prefer a much cleaner layout, which is I call scope self-initialize at the end, and I call a search and a preview functions that are above in my code. It's making it a bit cleaner for me, at least. By the way, I'm far from being a JavaScript expert, so if you are seeing any oddities or stuff in this code that could be more efficient, please open a bug on the developer portal project, on the developer.ubuntu.com project, and do my best to fix it. If you have any hints about improving this JavaScript stub, contributions are welcome. So my preview. So let's see at how previews are done here. So there are very small previews, actually. Just a title component. You see an image, but it's part of the title I'm going to show you, and a text widget. So in my preview, so I have a preview reply to which I will push the preview. As you can see, it's pretty much the same structure of code and API behavior. So first, I'm starting by creating a layout. And by layout, I mean how the preview is going to be displayed depending on the size of the screen. So I'm only using one layout. This will be the topic of more advanced workshop. So let's put it on the side for now and just see how I'm creating a one call layout, because this is what it looks like, in which I put a header, a summary, and a button. You can see the button here because there is a small bug right now in Unity scope tool, but it should be fixed quite fast. So I create a column, and then I register this layout on the preview reply. Then I create my components. So I'm creating a header component, and to it, a header widget. and I'm adding a title in the title of my model to the title field of the component, which is the bold one, subtitle, which is under the title, and mascot, which is an image that is smaller than the usual big image, and which is on the left of the title. It's called a mascot. There are a lot of resources on developer.ubuntu.com specifically about card structures for scopes. So let's see, it's in scopes, guides, customization and branding. It's a pretty extensive guide on what you can do with a scope. Visually, I mean. You have all the definitions for the card template we talked about earlier, and for the cards themselves, title, art, subtitle, mascot, and there is emblem, summary, background, attributes, overvector. It's it should be pretty extensive, and I actually really like this guide. So if you have any issues with it, or if you need any clarifications, just drop me an email or ping me on IRC, David Calais, or on Google+, David Calais as well. So let's get back to our code. So I'm mapping attributes to my preview widget. Then I do the same for the description. I create a preview widget, which is a summary ID, which is a text widget as well. It's defined in the API doc. So you have header widgets, text widgets, button widgets, art widgets, table widgets, comments field widgets. I'm not sure about the name of this one, but you can build a basic UI pretty fast. And then on my text, I map the description field from my result to the text widget. And same for the button, the URL to the URL, and the string view to the label of the button. Then I push everything to the preview reply, and I call finished when I'm done. It's a mental exercise where you map a model to a UI, and you do it dynamically. It's pretty easy to get the hang of it, and it's a model that works quite well for scopes. Well, it can always be improved, but it gives a lot of flexibility. So next, I'm going to show you how to brand your scope. So you can customize the cards, you can create departments, but as you can see, if I run my default scope, I have a standard Ubuntu logo here, a light gray background, a gray bar, and a gray background as well. So you can change all of this in the data folder of your scope and in the scope name.ini file. So what we're going to look is the appearance entry. So the logo, the page header, so the page header, as you can imagine, is the top part of our scope. I'm just uplinking to the GitHub logo on GitHub. You can use local paths as well, but for the sake of demonstrating the flexibility, I've outlinked to GitHub. Page header background, I'm using color white, and I'm using color here because you can also make gradients. So I could just say gradient, one color and another one, this way. Foreground color is the text and icons color. Divider is a dark gray divider you can see here. And background is the background of results. Foreground, the color of the text. So let's say changes to ED 4814, which is a nice color. And here it is. Everything is orange. This color scheme is okay-ish. Well, let's switch it back. Something that looks more like GitHub, because the idea is to have color layout that matches the service or whatever you are trying to display in your scope. Same as card templates. This is documented in the scope customization and branding guide, which is in scopes, guides, customization and branding. You have all the fields and all the keys needed to make your scope look the way you want. Same as well for renderers and cards layout and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it for now. One thing to note is that that you can't run scopes if you happen to have an Ubuntu phone. You can't run your scope directly on the phone from the SDK. You have to create a package and install it on your phone. That's the only way to test it on the phone right now. Okay, I'm going to publish this code, and you will find it on developer.ubuntu.com in the scopes tutorial section. I'm going to see if there are any questions. No. Well, I need to go back to here. And thanks for watching. If you have any questions, just drop me a line on IRC, David Calais, on Google+, and just on the phone mailing list. And we'll do our best to answer them, me and the Scopes API team. Thank you very much. Bye.